Okay, good morning, tribe. Happy Monday. Hope everyone's doing fantastic. Got a few questions here. Wanted to go over them with you. Thanks for sending me your questions. And let me just kind of pull them up and then I'll get straight to it. Okay. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with Robin's question. Robin, you asked me, hi, Paul, hope all is well. In a working environment, how would you recommend handling other employees who are clearly not supportive as team players? You know, in my opinion, here's what I would do. Just work with them where you have to, meaning that I would collaborate with them to get your work done. But other than that, then I avoid them. There's really no point in working with people that aren't going to be supportive of you. If you are in a corporate or working environment, obviously you have a task that you have to do. So if you need this other person to collaborate with and to work with or to get your task done, then do that as a minimum so you can get your work done and kind of move on. But I mean, to establish a relationship with someone that's not supportive or someone that's not complimentary to you, that's just kind of a waste of time in my opinion. You know, I was in corporate America for 15, 20 years, and if I wasn't getting along, no matter how hard I tried, there's just no point in it. It really is distracting to getting your work done and being productive at work. So again, short answer here is just deal with them, get your work done, and kind of ignore them because it's not going to help you at all. So that's what I would do, Robin. Thanks for the question. Let's go to the next one. Gabs says, hi, Paul. Our main company is a family business. The three partners are my parents and I. One second, let me expand it. Recently, my parents' relationship has been going from bad to worse, and it threatens the future of the company. My father's role in particular is indispensable, and he refuses to train replacements or delegate any of his responsibilities. How would you isolate a company from personal problems like this? How would you make a current irreplaceable partner replaceable if he's not on board with this concept right now? So guys, hey man, this is a really difficult situation, and I don't know if you can actually, in the kind of setup or the structure that you have with your parents and yourself being the partners of the company, I don't know. I mean, in my opinion, I don't know if you can separate personal issues from business because they're blending together, right? So this is a really, really tough situation. If I'm looking at it from straight on, if your dad, it seems like your dad is not getting along with your mom, it's getting worse, and he doesn't want to train or replace anybody. He doesn't want to take his empirical knowledge and move it away. I mean, I hate to say it, but I mean, there's nothing that you can really do about that. I think there's so much personal anger and animosity that it's, that's a very tough situation. So I guess what I can do is I can give you an example. I mean, first of all, it's very difficult to work with family members to begin with because it's very hard to separate the business aspect and personal. Because if you hurt someone's feelings at work, they don't go home to their other family. They go home to the same family, right? So that's why it's difficult. And, generally when we're really close to each other, especially loved ones, we tend to say things that are more hurtful than we would. Our boundaries are different. So, working with family by itself is really, really difficult. And if it's kind of deteriorated to this particular situation already, it might be a little bit too far down the pipe, right? So in that sense, how do you're asking me questions on how do you make him replaceable? If your dad holds all the knowledge of your business, you're not going to be able to. And if he's not going to be willing to take that knowledge and replace himself or to teach them someone else, there's really nothing that I can see, at least in my opinion, there's nothing that I can see that you're going to be able to do something about that. So with that being said, what I would do is I would look at the cards that you've dealt and see how you can progress forward. What do you need to do to make it successful, right? So here are the cards, here's the building blocks. What do you need to do now? So I'll give you an example. When prior to starting Identify Talent, I was with three different. I was in a partnership. It was three of us, right? And we weren't family members, so it was a little bit easier. But hopefully you'll kind of get a gist of this. After about 3 years of working together, we just weren't seeing eye to eye. We didn't have the same direction. We weren't collaborating collectively, and there was a lot of animosity that was being built between us. So I took the cards that I was dealt, and I knew I couldn't change the situation that I was in. So I sold my share of that partnership, and then I started Identify Talent, and I built it the way that I needed to be, to the way that I needed it to run. So basically, in your situation, I don't know if this is feasible, but what I did was I said, okay, well, here's what I'm going to get. This is what I've learned from the last 3 years, 4 years, or the family business. I can't change the dynamics of it, but I can create my own, and I can start structuring it from the beginning so this doesn't happen, right? So like, again, you know, if you can go back in time and say, look, Dad, I'm going to take, when everything was good, your mom and dad were seeing eye to eye, you guys were all happy. If you can back then take all that knowledge out of your dad, put it into I mean, you can even put it into a Word doc or whatever, depends on how complex it is, then you would probably not be in this situation. But now that you're in this situation, it's really hard to go back. So it might be one of those things where, you know, if you continue to want to do this kind of work and your company is currently deteriorating, 2 out of the 3 partners are fighting, and they don't, you know, they're not seeing eye to eye. It might be one of those things where if you do want to do this, you might want to, and again, this is my experience. I went out on my own, and I did much better when I wasn't being drugged down, dealing with personal problems and my issues with my former partners. I started something on my own, and it kind of just flourished from there. So, you know, that's based on my experience. I don't know if that's something feasible for you. I don't know if that's something that you want to embark on. It's what I did when I wasn't seeing eye to eye with my partners, and I just knew I can do it better on my own. And I went out on my own, and I established the way I want it to be run. So that would be my advice on this particular situation. Next question is, Shelly asked me, hi, Paul, thanks for your time. I'm in the rebuilding phase. Have you ever needed to go back to a company that began failing? I left it in the wrong hands. Currently working to balance daily operations while implementing new technology and process. My goal is to remove as much human error element as possible. Any suggestions? To answer your first question, no, I haven't. I've never gone back to a company that I left to, I guess, fix it or help it from failing. But I think from what you're trying to talk about here as far as human error, I'm not exactly sure what that is, but I am a big proponent and I'm a big supporter of implementation, right? Because from an administrative or a day-to-day task basis, if you can automate your task and you can make it replicable every single time, then not only are you going to lower cost because you're not employing people, you're going to lower downtime because of any kind of errors that are made. Using mistakes are more costly, you know. So if you are using technology or automation to make your systems or your operations currently more effective and more efficient, then I'm all for that. I think that's the right direction that you should be going. Depending on the size of your company, the one thing about automation is that there's also adaptation to that, right? So the humans that do work at your company, they also need to adapt to the new automation that's coming, right? One of the most difficult things about any kind of automation or technology implementation is the human barrier to it, right? Anytime you put in technology, what happens is, as humans, we psychologically say, oh my gosh, things are changing. None of us like change. None of us want to go through change. And that's the same thing in technology and business too. We go through this change management where it's, here's a new technology that's coming aboard. Here's what you have to learn. Here's what you have to adapt. you have to sell it to the employee base and make sure that they understand it and why why their job is going to be more efficient because of it and how they're going to help them, or they tend to resist. So, so in this sense, depending on how big the company is or the size of your company, even if it's like 2 or 3 people that you're training the systems on, you want to make sure that they understand why you're doing it and how it's going to be helping them, right? So I think you're on the right track if you really want to reduce human error, to make sure that you automate things that you can. I would also understand that if you automate things, it's not going to go smoothly at the beginning, right? Because like anytime you automate things, things are they're not often cookie cutter. You can't just put it in a company and then all of a sudden it's going to work properly. Once you get it in there, there's going to be hiccups, and sometimes the ramp up time or the effort that has to be done before you can get it smoothed out is a lot higher than you would if you just kind of maintain status quo. But just know that if you are, there's going to be a little bit of high touch and effort to try to get that to where it's running efficiently. Okay. Hopefully that helps you out, Shelly. Let's see. Eric has a comment here. Let me just read this really quick, and then I'll get to your question, Eric. Hi, Paul. What is a good way to monitor social media use with a service techs that are on their own field? Trying to manage. Okay. I would, you can call it I'm sure wherever you're located, there's a whole bunch of like local IT desktop help desk outsourcing companies. I use a outsourcing company for our technology. When we set up, when we have a new person that comes aboard, they have to order their computers, get their all their Windows licenses and everything. If there's something wrong, they can connect to a printer. They handle all that stuff. With that being said, they can also restrict on the phone. Now, you got to make sure that it's if they're using their personal phone and their personal data and you're reimbursing them, you're not going to be able to like say anything about that, right? But if you provide them with like technology, like a laptop or a phone, then you can have your IT company basically regulate what sites they can and when they can't use, and you can monitor pretty much everything, right? I would, to that question, look for a local outsourcing IT company that does your desktop and your help desk and all that stuff, and they can easily implement those parameters in your technology. Your other questions here is, hello, Paul, thank you for being here. I currently run a business out of our home. The issue I had in the past with our techs is that when they're entering our home and our family, and they're basically going to your house, right? So you're running the business out of your house and they're going to your house for meetings or what have you. This had made it difficult for my wife and I not to feel a bit inviting, friendly, and family like our relationships with our techs. And then you give an example. Sometimes they say, hi, Alex. I think you're talking to a tech. Hi, Alex. You want some cookies we baked last night? Oh, you're working on this, because they can see their whiteboard. I would like to keep the relationship business. What are some guidelines that I might utilize in this situation to help keep the relationship of future techs and business not personal? P.S. Our office corner is our dining room area. Okay. Yeah, that gets a little bit hard, right? Because you're inviting them to your house, and I think just from a psychological standpoint, if you invite someone to your house, that's a very personal space. So it's hard not to, and the reason why I know this is because about a year ago, we went completely virtual. So we don't have any more offices anymore. And for a time being, people were coming to my house, and I remember I'm like, hey, do you want me to make you some food or what have you? And it got a little bit weird, and we stopped talking about business for a little bit, and we started talking about family, and then we started moving away from what we needed to handle for them coming over here. My suggestion, if it's feasible, is that what we do now is we have a corporate shared office that we just rent space if I need a day office or a conference room, what have you. There's companies like Regis or WeWork, or I think Regis made a Spaces community thing. I think local hotels, if you don't have it, have a conference room. that you can book out from time to time. That's my best suggestion, to separate the work and family, because like if they're coming into your house, it's very difficult not for them to look around and look at your personal items, and for you not to want to welcome them in. If you really want to keep it separated, I would look into like maybe just like day offices that you can talk to them with, or you can rent a conference room at one of those shared offices. That's what I would do. And for me, it worked really good. If possible, I don't know how much face-to-face time that you need. Now we do weekly meetings with the people that I need to talk to on Zoom. And we communicate on Slack all day long, so we don't necessarily have to invite them over, or we don't necessarily have to meet all the time. If it's one-on-one, I take them out to lunch, and we can talk there. So there's a lot of different ways to get around it, but you just have to find a place that's not in your house, because in your house is it's very intimate from a personal standpoint. Okay, so number 2 here, in search for new texts that do enter clients' homes. Let me just read that again, because this is actually a very important question. I read this one earlier. In searching for new texts that do enter clients' homes and sometimes personal spaces, is it important for us to background check for clean record and drug testing for future hires? Let me answer that one first. Absolutely, 1000%. If you are not background, I think it's good practice for anybody that has employees, because as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, it's not only our responsibility to grow the business and make sure that it's successful, but it's also our responsibility to make sure not only our clients safe, but also our coworkers are safe and we are safe, right? And one of the provisions that we do is we make sure we background check people, right? Because if you don't, and you don't have that, so if you don't have a background check policy, first of all, everybody that has employees needs to have a handbook, right? So that's just bottom line, you need to have that. And if you don't have that, you need to consult with an HR company to help you build a handbook, right? Because that's basically your guidelines on how you're managing your employee base. And in that handbook, you have to make sure that you document, okay, here are the parameters of what we're doing to background check people. Here is what is excluded. It's your company. You can kind of just, as long as it's not discriminatory, obviously, right? There's a Civil Rights Act that you can't be discriminatory against people's color, creed, or race, or pregnancy, or anything like that. As long as it's non-discriminatory like that, you can put like, okay, if you have a driving record or this and this and this and this, you can put that all in there to make sure that you put provisions, right? So in this case, you have people that are directly underneath you. I don't know if they're 1099 contractors, or I don't know if they're W-2s, but I'll kind of give you the scenario on both. If you have a W-2 employee and you're not background checking somebody and they steal something out of there, or they're inebriated, or they're intoxicated while they go over there and they break something, you're going to have a lawsuit on your hands. One way to make sure that you're protecting is just a step. They can do that regardless if you have a background check or not. But the one thing that you do need to do is you need to background check them to see if there's any priors. That way you can make the decision if they're going to go in there, right? So that's one thing that you need to do to protect yourself. If they're 1099 employees, then you have to make sure that they have their own insurance, right? So what's going to happen is if they don't, they're going to go to the whoever's contracting this person, and technically, we're supposed to have the deep pockets. They're going to go after you. So, it's a very long answer to your question, but I cannot state enough that you should. Anybody that has employees should be doing at least a criminal background search, right? Because it gives you an opportunity, if something happens, to say, I did a background search, it was clean, let's move forward. But if you're not, then you have a different lawsuit in your hand, okay? Then you ask, what are ways have you gone about getting this practice? There's hundreds and hundreds of background check companies out there. I would interview them both. So I use, we run, I don't know, dozens and dozens of background checks a month, right? So it could be a cost factor, it could be a customer service factor. We use Career Builder Employment Services or Employer Services. So Career Builder actually has a employee services that we use. I used to use a company called Pre-Employ. We got a little bit big where they couldn't handle our volume. and also the Career Builder integrates with our system, so it's easy to just load the candidates and send them a background check from one system. There's Sterling background check. There's Accurate. There's HireRight. All you have to do is Google search and hit background check companies, and you'll get a slew of them that comes up. But again, I mean, I can't tell you enough how important it is to background check your people if you're working with, if you have employees. Okay, Marcel. Hi, Paul. Thank you so much for doing this. I am in the early years of developing a bikini swimwear line. I have been having issues finding, establishing relationship, and managing a team that can bring it all together so I have a final product to sell. In the early years of building this, what are things that I can do to help this process? Is it just going out there and trying things, or is there an easier path? I'm new to the industry, but I know I can make it successful. Thanks for your tips. So from what I gather about your question, it looks like you're in a product development stage. It looks like maybe you're designing or you're building or creating your swimwear. There's not a final product that's ready to launch. I don't know if you have the designs and you're ready to launch and you need to get manufacturing or funding to get that pushed out, or maybe all of the above, right? At the very beginning, it says that establish relationship, managing a team that can bring it all together. I'm just going to assume that you need to get a team or something to get it launched out. Like I'm gonna assume that you have the designs already. You just need to get it manufactured and pushed out. One or two ways. The easiest way to, at this stage of the game, to get your product or service out is just pay someone to do it, right? So you're gonna have to fork over a certain amount of cash to make sure that it happens, right? So, and that's usually what happens. In business, if you have a product or a service and you want to do something, you raise cash, you pay someone to do it, and more than not, they're going to do it because you're paying them to do it. But you also have to make sure that you have the right vendors or the right people in place that you're paying that executes whatever product or your bikini line, right? So easiest way is to make sure that you're paying someone to execute and making sure that you can get whatever designs that you have to a final product that you can mass distribute. The other way, which I don't know, I tend to hesitate to say this, but the other way is to try to bring. And again, I'm reading into your question, and I'm hoping I'm understanding it correctly, but is to get partners, I guess, that have that product experience, right? Or someone on your advisory board to help you get that experience to develop your product, if that's what you're asking. And generally, if you're bringing somebody in, then you're going to be giving a portion of your business to them or a share or what have you. So, but that gets kind of dicey, especially like, I mean, I might be a little bit different from everyone else. I just don't recommend people, if you have an idea, I don't recommend bringing in too many partners at the beginning, because it's very difficult. I mean, when your business is small, you need to try to grow it the way you want to grow. And when you're small, competing in, I mean, the bikini or the swimwear space, I'm assuming it's gigantic, right? Just as my industry is staffing, it's gigantic. There's a lot of competition. The only difference between us and those big guys right now is that we can remain nimble. The more people we put into our business, as far as partners, as far as the relationship, as far as managing a team, then you don't become as nimble, because then you have a bunch of people that you have to make decisions with, and sometimes they don't agree. So if you can, again, the short of it is pay someone to get your product out there, right? Find some vendors and pay someone, unless you have someone that you trust to go into partnership with, right? So hopefully that helps. All right, we're going to our last question here. It's from Kimberly. Kimberly says, I have been collaborating with another doctor of natural medicine to create a webinar to serve corporate workplace and HR. This is my first webinar. Number one, what tips can you provide us to make this a fantastic tool in our marketplace? Number two, how do we decide the price tag for our webinars? We each have almost 20 years in our fields and 4 years combined. Thanks for enlightening us. Thanks for being awesome, Paul. Well, thank you for being awesome, Kimberly. So let's go to number one. What are the tips that can provide us to make this fantastic tool in a target marketplace? So that's cool. I like what you're doing here. From a corporate workplace and HR. So corporations now, right? We have this incredible amount of healthcare costs, right? And when I mean, you can go out and study how much it affects the bottom line in revenue when employees are sick and they're not well, and when they take time off, or when they are at work and they're not operating at their full efficiency, right? I think all of us know that if we get on a healthy workout regimen, or we feel good about ourselves, we're just more productive, period. Rather than when we're eating crap and we're not exercising and we're, I don't know, putting the wrong things in our body, then we feel like crap. We're not as productive. So corporations are really trying to maneuver into that because they're really seeing how it affects the bottom line from a revenue standpoint and an efficiency standpoint, right? So the reason why I'm saying this is one of the tips and one of the great selling points is if you can gather that data, right? And whatever webinar, I'm not sure, and I'm just assuming it's a natural medicine and it's wellness, right? So I would really take that data and really help, because at the end of the day, when you're presenting to HR or a corporation, they want to see how everything's going to affect the bottom line, right? They're not just going to do it because they want to incentivize the employees. I mean, as much as we want to be, utopian and everything, corporations don't run that way. They want to know how it's going to affect the bottom line. If you can show them those studies about these particular how your particular webinar or how particular your service can help improve the wellness of their employees, thus increasing their productivity, that's going to go light years, right? So that would be my biggest tip, is when you're selling this product, you want to make sure that you have that little spin on it, not just, okay, what we're doing, but how is it actually going to affect their employee base, and how is it going to improve their efficiency, and how is it going to improve their productivity based on empirical and based on factual studies that they've had in the past. So that's what I would throw in there to help you target the right market, right? Now, as far as going after these right markets, I jump on LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn there's the one thing about LinkedIn is that it has every HR person, every recruiter involved, anybody there. If you want to start targeting these people and having these conversations, that's a good place to begin, is to jump on LinkedIn and try to figure out. What I would do is go in your local area, do a circumference search, and find out who are the corporate HR departments, because they're the ones that handle these kinds of things. It's usually, if the company is larger, it's usually incentives and benefits that does it. It's comp that does it. If it's not that big, you can just go to their general HR department and try to start building relationships through LinkedIn. You can call in and let them know your product. Because to be quite honest with you, it's not that they don't want to implement or they're going to get bombarded. They just don't know about these services, right? And if they did know about these services, then they will most likely be able to at least listen to what you're saying. And if it makes sense for them, then they'll see if they can get approval to use it, right? Second question here is, how do you decide the price tag of your webinar? So here's what I would do. I think this is kind of across the board with any product or service. Recently, I teamed up with some past colleagues to do a seminar company. So, there's very similar other companies that do what we do. However, we're looking at what their price tags are, right? So what I do is I do comparisons. Basically, I look on the internet, I try to find out who is doing something similar from the wellness space. It doesn't have to be exact, but it has to be close enough to understand this is their price point. And then I get a sample size of what those kinds of webinars cost, right? So if you have a wellness seminar that costs $1,000 and another wellness seminar that costs $500, you want to see what their offerings are and I would market test that way. I'd look at what other competing companies or what other similar space that are offering your product and see what their price point is, right? And then you can get a baseline from there. So let's say you examine 10 of them and 10 of them seem, okay, that's fairly similar, not in content, but in structure to mine. So their average price is, I don't know, $5.95. Then I would see if I would price it at $5.95. Now, you also have to take in consideration, does that $595 also cover your costs? Does it cover everything that you need to have, that you need to do to produce that content, and also to have a profit for you to be for you to live too? So that's how I would blend it, and that's how I would find the price point on it, right? I don't think it's very wise to just kind of, you know, put your finger up in the air and say, well, okay, let's try $1,000, right? Because you don't know if you're being too overpriced in the market, and you don't know if you're being too underpriced in the market. So it's really important to do a little bit of research and try to figure out what that you know, sweet spot, what that number is for you, not only based on your experience and what kind of content you have in your webinar, but also based on what's yielding in the market, right? So it's, you know, just a quick example, it's like real estate market. You look at your local real estate market and they give you comparables, right? So like you're selling your house or you're trying to buy a house in a certain market, they're gonna give you comparables. That's what I would do, is just trying to get comparables to try to figure out what you're gonna price your house at or what you're gonna price the product at, okay? I think that's it, guys. Other than that, I think we're done. I think we got this done in just right above 30 minutes, so that's really cool. That's it. If I missed any of your questions, feel free to post it on the wall on the group page. I'm trying to get a lot better at getting back on that wall. I'm not always on Facebook, so tag me. I'll do my very best to get it back, or you can ask me in the next mentor session. But other than that, guys, I hope you have a fantastic week. Yeah, just keep on rocking. Keep on rocking. All right, guys. We will see you later.